All right, my name is Hiram Shelton, and this is my video on the U.S. Constitution for my class Criminal Justice 4160. So let's start out with the events leading to the creation of the Constitution. These are the Articles of Confederation, Shays' Rebellion, and the Constitutional Convention. So the Articles of Confederation had some problems. There was a lack of ability to tax, regulate trade, and enforce laws. And then Shays' Rebellion, this was an uprising of farmers, and really they were uprising to protest some economic injustices as well as a weak government. And then the Constitutional Convention happened. This was held in Philadelphia, and the original plan was just to revise articles, but actually what ended up happening was it ended up leading to the draft of the new Constitution. So the founders of the Constitution had some justifications behind the Constitution. They had some issues with the Articles of Confederation, and they also had some goals behind the Constitution. Some of their issues with the Articles of Confederation were that there was a lack of centralized authority, and there was also some difficulty amending the Articles, which required unanimous consent. Nowadays, we know we just need kind of more of a majority vote, which allows things to be much more smooth in updating changes. And some goals of the Constitution were to establish a government with sufficient power to function effectively. They wanted to create a system of checks and balances which would prevent tyranny, and they also wanted a balance of powers between federal and state governments. Now, we have topics covered in the Constitution, such as the preamble, which starts, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility," and I'm sure you know the rest if you've listened to Schoolhouse Rock. Articles, we have, this is where the legislative, executive, and judicial branches were kind of formed and understood. And then we also have amendments. Now the first 10 are actually just the Bill of Rights, and today we have a total of 27 amendments. So now we have nonviolent transition of power. Nonviolent transitions of power happen because we have an electoral process vote, which allows the majority vote and to kind of take hold and kind of says this is fair and it's a fair deal. And then there are also checks and balances, which prevents one branch of government from dominating another. And so because of these things being in place, then we have a smooth transition of power without violence. The very first time we had a non-violent transition of power was actually between Adams to Jefferson. This happened in 1800, and Adams was actually a Federalist, whereas Jefferson was a Democratic Republican. And this was the first time that there was a transition of power in the presidency without violence and without any upheaval. So the amendment process. Article 5 proposes that there's two methods for amendments. So the first method is that it can be proposed by Congress with a 2/3 majority in both houses. And the second is that it can be proposed by a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of state legislatures. And amendments must be ratified by 3/4 of state legislatures or conventions in order to really make it. And the importance of this is that it ensures adaptability. This makes it so that the Constitution is living, it's breathing, and it's able to protect our government and protect us as individuals despite the obstacles at hand, and allows us to be prepared for the future. So, limiting government power. So there are explicit limitations. Two that I want to focus on are the First Amendment and checks and balances. So the First Amendment has freedom of speech, religion, press, assembly, and petition, and it protects individual rights through these 5 things. In checks and balances, it prevents one branch from taking over and having too much power. And an example of this is the president's power to veto a decision. So the branches of government, we know, are the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. This legislative branch makes laws. This would be like the Congress, House of Representatives, and Senate. And executive branch, this is enforce laws. This is the president, vice president, and the cabinet, their cabinet. And the judicial branch, they interpret the law. The Supreme Court and lower federal courts. So these three branches of government are all very strong and very helpful to our government, but the most important thing is that because they all three exist, we have a balance of power. Meaning no matter who's in office, we have a balance. We have still the majority still reigns supreme. So now the role of power and the Supreme Court. So established by Article 3, the Supreme Court is the highest court in the US. The judicial review, there is a power to declare laws unconstitutional, and this was established in Marbury versus Madison in 1803. This is important because it shows the power of the judicial, the Supreme Court, and the judicial branch. They interpret the law, meaning that they get to decide what the Constitution is trying to convey, and they get to decide what is best for really the wording and the purposes behind the Constitution, and what is best for the government and the laws that protect people and our policies. So, summary, conclusion, the Constitution was created to have a strong yet limited government, and limited with purpose, in that we as individuals and states still have freedoms and protections. Its flexibility or adaptability allows it to remain relevant no matter what the time is. Through the majority vote rather than a unanimous vote allows us to change according to the times and stay up to date. And so some final thoughts. We the people emphasizes that the power of government comes from its citizens, again, that majority. And I just want to finish with a good quote from Patrick Henry, and that is, "The Constitution is not an instrument for the government to restrain the people, it is an instrument for the people to restrain the government." And so here are my references, including our textbook, Constitutional Law and the Criminal Justice System, 7th edition. And thanks so much, and I appreciate you listening to my presentation.